What's up, it's Andrea. Today, Star Trek rips off 2001 A Space Odyssey, but poorly. Our guest unlocks the secret of being a white guy, and we ask the question, just why? Stay tuned to find out.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today, we are talking about Season 2, Episode 12, entitled The Royale. This episode was written by Tracy Torme, but used a fake name as Keith Mills, which we'll get into in a second, directed by Cliff Bull, and the star date kicking off is 42625.4. So my synopsis is going to be just one sentence. The Enterprise investigates strange debris in orbit around a nearby planet, only to find that a piece of a NASA spacecraft has emblazoned with the U.S. flag. And the only second note I have is dumb. It's just the worst plot. This episode is just a soup sandwich. It's a mess. Shereese, do you have any initial thoughts on this? And then we'll get into some special guests and some.
Yeah. I mean, I also agree dumb is a really good just description. And that's probably my overall thoughts. Yeah. And we'll get into the episode for exactly why. If you have not yet watched Royale, if you're watching along with us, if you have not yet watched Royale, maybe give it a skip. Not gonna lie, maybe give it a skip. Okay, so today we have a very special guest joining us, which I'm so excited about. Gil Barron. This is a person we met on Clubhouse, that audio only app. And if you guys are on Clubhouse, go ahead and find Andrea and I on there because we love connecting with people who listen to our show. So Gil is kind of a big deal. He's worked at Comedy Central and DreamWorks, and he's worked for CBS. And he's currently working on a ton of stuff. He's produced comedy shows all over Los Angeles. Right now, he's working on a show called Your Late Night Show Tonight. And I would just like to welcome to the audio, Gil.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So one reason why we wanted Gil on our show is not just because he's hilarious and awesome, but also because he's a Trekkie. And we just love having super fans on our show because we can get to we can geek out at a really insane level and have it be fun. And actually, I met Gil through Andrea because of a Clubhouse chat, which was ridiculous that I heard.
We were in a nerdy sci-fi room or something like that. And I was like, I need to ping Shereese in on this immediately. and there it was.
I think we were in a regular social room. And as I bring up in any interaction, I brought up Star Trek. And Andrea was very quickly like, I like Star Trek as well. And we took over the room because we are.
And then lots of people left the room.
Like rats from a sinking ship. And then there was only 2 left, but whatever. It led us to this moment right now.
It was amazing. Yes. So Gil, do you have any overall thoughts on this episode?
I disagree that people shouldn't watch it. I think it's one of those, so much of Next Generation is just there to relax you. It's very ASMR-y. It's very the background info. Nothing actually happens here.
Nothing.
We get a hint of kind of a threat. Maybe they can't get away from the thing, but then they do. There's nothing stopping them in the end from completing their mission. And I don't want to spoil this half a second before we spoil this, but yeah, essentially there's no malevolent intelligence. There's even the aliens have no motivation. They have no scheme. They have no reason. They just, the only reason our 3 heroes who are stuck on the planet can't leave is because the aliens aren't done yet.
Yeah.
That's
so
what it boils down
I agree with everything you just said, Gil, which makes me ask the question, why shouldn't people give this a skip?
Because sometimes Next Generation is great to have on in the background.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you're vacuuming or making a smoothie and you just want some sound in the background, definitely let Royale play in the back. But if you're I need me some good Trekkie time, I don't know about this one. Maybe watch last week's episode.
There's not even a good science fiction concept here.
No, there's absolutely nothing. Okay, usually, just for a little behind the scenes, it usually takes me 2 to 2.5 hours to watch a Star Trek TNG episode when I'm reviewing it for our podcast, because I pause, I'm taking a lot of notes. This episode took like 4 to 5 hours because I kept just walking away and like going on Clubhouse, checking out Instagram. And then I was like, oh, that's still going on. Okay, I got to go back to it. So it took like all night to watch this stupid episode. It was just sort of like air, but like in the shape of an Enterprise and a couple of away team members. But it was just sort of air. Like really nothing happened at all.
Yeah, and I did the opposite of Andrea. I 15 minutes into the episode, I was like, oh, look, Netflix has this new feature where you can speed up an episode. This is amazing. So I put it on 1.5. And then 15 minutes later, I was like, this is still going? Like, why doesn't Netflix have like a 3X or a 5X? We need to get through this. But anyways, so that's our overall thoughts. Honestly, I don't know how many beats we're going to have through this episode, but we all have notes of some kind. So let's go ahead and jump in.
Yes. Okay. So my initial thought on this was they just took this idea straight out of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which if you have not seen it, and I actually just recently watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago and absolutely am like completely in love with this. I think it's a masterpiece. A man is, not to give too much away, but a man is like trapped in a place and the powers that be kind of construct a comfortable prison sort of like environment based on like his memories for him to like live out the rest of his days. So that's kind of what happens here. It's like these aliens, for whatever reason, take this man and they're like, we're gonna, you have this like cheap, trashy novel with you in your space shuttle for some reason. We're just gonna construct a world based on that so you can just kind of live out the rest of your days there. And I was like, this is 2001: A Space Odyssey, but like a fucking million times worse. It's just so much worse. It's just so much worse. The little bit of trivia I have on this is that Tracy Torme, who wrote The Big Goodbye and a couple of our like, beloved episodes, had his name removed from the credits after he became totally unsatisfied with all the rewrites.
Oh, that's why there was the pen name. That's clever. Yeah, that was a good call.
His original idea was for like a surreal nightmare about an astronaut who's stuck forever in his most pleasant memory. So it's like sort of that, but then they rewrote and rewrote and rewrote.
That would be amazing. That was a Twilight Zone episode. There was probably like 10 Twilight Zone episodes. But yeah, that idea of like you're stuck in this idyllic place and it's so wonderful and so lovely, but you can't ever leave, and then it turns into a nightmare and all the loveliness is awful and you can't escape it. Like that would have been a super fascinating episode to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like Pleasantville. That movie Pleasantville was sort of like that too. Go ahead, Gil. I cut you off.
That's okay. That's the plot of the current story arc in Thor, if you guys are reading any of those comics.
I am not reading
Donald
those comics.
Blake, who in the 1960s was Thor's alter ego, like he used to slap down. He was like a doctor who had a limp, and when he would slap down his cane, he would turn into Thor, and the cane would turn into the hammer.
What?
But the idea was that, like, where did Donald Blake go when Thor showed up? He went to this kind of idyllic neighborhood where he could kind of run around and be in a dream. And the current story arc is that he went fucking crazy and is finally coming back to murder Thor and the rest of the gods.
Yeah, because he's got to get out of this like idyllic, pleasant place. See, any of these, can we just talk about those? Like, because this episode is nothing.
Any of those plot lines would be so fascinating.
Yes.
And this just was.
I don't know if this is something you want to hit right later on, but the diary entry is so funny.
Yes, let's get to that.
Let's get last diary entry. You're like, really?
And also his only one. Like you're living there 38 years and you wrote one fucking diary entry.
To be fair, that's how I buy journals as well. I buy a journal, I write one page, I buy another journal 5 years later.
I guess that's true. And I'm like, I am going to journal. And then I just end up using it to like write
as
the grocery list
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when this episode opens, Geordi and Riker are at the science station on the bridge and they're analyzing the planet. And I had such a nerd catch. I was like, wait a second. So Geordi describes that the temperature on the surface of the planet is negative 291 degrees Celsius, which for anybody who's sciencey will know that is actually less than absolute zero. You can't get that cold. So absolute zero on the Kelvin scale is negative 273 degrees. So that is like at the point where everything is so cold that like atoms stop moving.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I saw this on Memory Alpha also. And one of the things Memory Alpha points out, and I don't know if this is in text on the screen or something, is also that the age of the planet is older than the universe actually is. older than we know the universe to be. So what it actually made me think of is that maybe this is part of the supernatural idea of the episode of like, okay, it's not only impossibly old, it's also impossibly cold.
Like the planet's impossible, basically.
Like it's an impossible planet, and maybe it sort of exists in more of a Twilight Zone-y kind of thing.
You know what? That's fair. I'm going to buy that. I'm going to say that's exactly what the writers were going for, even though we all know it's not. Because even that makes it more interesting. You're like, oh, okay, it's like an impossible planet. The whole planet's impossible. Like that would be interesting.
That makes more sense. I feel like the age of the planet being older than the universe was probably the thing that made Tracy Torme lose his shit for the last time and be like, put a pen name on this because I want nothing to do with this episode. Mm-hmm. Yes, because now we're bordering into like supernaturally area. But all right. So Riker goes to talk to Picard, and Picard, here's a cool catch. Picard is talking about Fermat's last theorem, and it's this mathematical theorem from 1637, and it has not been solved for hundreds of years. Okay, so Picard is saying like for 800 years now, like no one has been able to provide a proof for this math theorem. But as it turns out, super nerd and all-around rock star Andrew Wiles found a proof in 1995 and published it. And so if you're looking at like Star Trek timeline, it wouldn't make sense because they'd be like, oh, on Earth in 1995, like somebody
right, which
solved
they couldn't have possibly done because this episode was recorded in like 1989.
Yeah, it was like 89 or 90. So they actually added this little tidbit somewhere in Deep Space Nine where they mentioned like Andrew Wiles did solve Fermat's theorem. So I thought that was kind of neat. I was like, oh yeah, the writers are like, ooh, someone solved it. We need to kind of like make that consistent with like the timeline. So that was
we need to go back to the Royale and correct that one line that Picard said.
That's what really needs to be corrected.
Ronald D. Moore was like, you know, these nerds love their continuity. I got to go back to the Royale. You know that classic episode?
I'm about to start a petition just having the Royale taken right out of it. Out of let's canon. Just make it never happen. Yeah, just take it out of canon.
Let it be the impossible episode.
Yes, have it be Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Just make it never happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's not part of the world.
The 13th floor of a hotel, right? Where it's just cursed. So we're just gonna go from 12 to 14. And that's what we should have done here. We should have just gone from episode 11 to episode 13.
Yes. So Wesley discovers like this frozen slab of methane that has breathable air and like a building around it. And I don't know what the fuck the visual team was trying to do, but like it just made no sense. Like, so Riker, Data, and Worf beam down, and there's this like methane storm going above them.
Why wouldn't you beam down into this horrible location?
Right. And I love that Geordi's like, nasty, like over and over again because of like how inhospitable the planet is. I want to take that soundbite and apply it to a whole bunch of inappropriate things.
Well, here's
I don't know if LeVar Burton would super love that, but yeah, that's pretty funny.
I have a question for you guys that's much more science-minded than me. The description that he gives of the planet of, you know, unbreathable and whatever, and it being super nasty, that's most planets, isn't it? Like wouldn't that describe Venus?
That's totally Venus.
Jupiter, doesn't that describe Saturn?
Yeah, that describes most planets, but not most planets in Star Trek. Like a lot of the planets are habitable by something. They're even if it's like a really hostile planet. Like, do you remember the Delphine or however you say that? They had
the Delphine, yeah.
Where like you can't, like humans can't exist there. You can only exist as a beam of light or whatever because it's so harsh and half the planet's all light, half the planet's all dark. So like most of the planets they encounter in their adventures are habitable to something. Some kind of life form can live in that place, even if humans can't. But here we have a planet that's like not habitable for anything. It's just so unlivable for all types of creatures. But there's this little pocket where it's got this Earth-like atmosphere. And that's kind of like, wait, what? And then that paired with the NASA shuttle debris is
did you say NASA?
Yes, that is what I said. That's how we say it in the South.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I just made that up.
Oh, okay. I was buying it. I was like, okay, that sounds fair. See, when you say something with enough like surety, people are like, okay,
Yep. Welcome to being a white dude. You got it. You figured it out.
I would know nothing about that because
that's the secret we've been wondering this whole time.
Just say it with enough confidence. I can't believe they beamed down without spacesuits. Like they know this is like a Venus. Yeah, but here where they know it's all uninhabitable, like even if they know that there's like a habitable bubble, like that could collapse at any moment. Wear a spacesuit.
You're right. You have been scanning this planet for about 4 seconds, right? And then Picard goes, breathable air. All right, let's get in the away team. Wait a minute. This is just bad management right here. Also, and I understand, I'm kind of with Gil. I think there are a lot of uninhabitable planets in Star Trek, but I think what he was basically trying to stress is like, not only is it uninhabitable, it's like a planet made of bleach fumes. You know what I mean? Where it's like nothing could live there, right? But like, yes, for him to be stressing how awful it is, and then Picard being like, better send a team of humans down. Like, let's get to, or like one human and like a Klingon and an android. It's like, I'm sure you guys will all be fine. Like, what? This is kind of a bad call.
So I don't have a problem with them beaming down because they have to do something with their day. But here's what I do have a problem with. They get onto the transporter pad and they're like, we don't know what to expect. We better take our phasers. So they take their phasers, they make sure they all have them, they put them in their holster, they transport down and immediately pull their phasers out of their holster. And I was just like, what's with the extra step? Did they need their phasers in their holster for transport? Why did they just keep them out? I just thought that was dumb.
But this is also so emblematic of season 1 and 2 Next Generation. Like, you definitely always see someone walk all the way to the door, wait for the door to open, walk down the hall. You know, they really do take their time a lot. And they did have to fill space on this episode, to be fair.
They sure did, because there's nothing. Yeah, the writers are probably like, we got about 10 minutes of usable space, and the rest, I don't know. We're just going to popcorn in a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know what to tell you. So, okay, the visual effect when they beam down to the planet is both really cool and really dumb, because the methane storm that's going on just like 100 meters above them is like this kind of green flying like gas. That looks cool. But then they're in this bubble that's just like a black space.
It looks like the poster of Ghostbusters, like the original Ghostbusters poster.
Oh, totally. It kind of does.
Totally.
Yeah, they're in this dark space, and then yes. But then I notice as they're walking around in this black space and they see this revolving door, which apparently is just free floating, it doesn't even attach to a building. They're standing what is very obvious, especially in like Ultra HD and all that stuff these days. They're standing in a black carpeted space. Like they're just walking on black carpet. I was like, what the fuck, you guys? You can't put some like rocks or some.
No, because it's like an impossible planet. They can't put anything on the ground. I like the swirly storm. I thought the swirly storm was cool. Yeah, and I think, like to Gil's point, if they had ghosts, that also would have made the episode more interesting. And I know they don't do ghosts, really. That's not like that really attractive.
They do ghosts.
Oh, they do. But that was an alien, though. I'm thinking of the Beverly episode that was a ghost, but it was really an alien. But it was pretending to be a ghost.
It was an alien who was a ghost.
Okay, so that one guy. But like here, if they had ghosts, that would have been again like, oh my gosh, this is like an impossible planet, and it's like, and then what they could have done is like maybe this planet's only like in phase like once a millennia or something.
Yeah. That would have made way more.
And then you're like, oh, okay, it like pops in and it's populated. It's so weird, but then it disappears. Like anything else would have been better.
I think the title of this episode is anything would have been better than this. Like we're coming up with all these different theories that just could have been like endlessly more fascinating to explore, but we end up with this, which is just like, ugh. So they walk in the revolving door and suddenly they're inside a casino. And it's like, what
they've never seen before in theory. They've maybe never been in a casino in a holodeck. So maybe they don't even know what this type of building is.
Probably not. Yeah, they're like, what is going on? And they immediately lose contact with the Enterprise. And then, which is like, bad idea. And then we immediately get into this like drama where you get like the saxophones and the bellboy is like, did Rita call? She's mine. And the other guy's like, not now. It's like,
there's a lot that I love about this scene.
Do tell, because I don't love it. So
I love this scene for the cheese factor so much, because the Royale is like, what decade is the Royale in? It's clearly in the 1980s, because that's what everyone's fashion is.
Yep.
1989, 1990. But the Royale itself as a hotel is partially riverboat themed, like 1900s river, like that's the costumes they're all wearing.
It's practically segregation themed. It's like, what the F?
And but the actual decor is like Moroccan Casablanca themed.
Yep.
So it's a lot of different things happening.
But then we've got this like gangster theme, right? Which is like the 1930s, where 20s and 30s, where we've got this like, hey, Big Jimmy or whatever, and you're like, what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The gangster comes in, and he is the most
Whatever
90s gangster I've ever seen. Like his shirt and his double-breasted suit scream 1992.
And the jacket with his arms not in the sleeve, just worn as a cape. I was like, dear God, what is happening here?
Yeah.
What is happening?
But what I loved about the interaction with the bellboy and the assistant manager is the assistant manager the bellboy comes in, did Rita call? And the assistant manager takes him to the side, but literally just turns him slightly this way. He's like, not in front of the guests, but he only just turns him a little bit and speaks at the exact same volume. Not trying to keep it a secret at all. I love that. So, yeah, the assistant manager guy is this character actor.
If you have a secret to tell or a secret to keep, don't tell the assistant manager.
Yeah, because he really wants everybody to know. The assistant manager is this actor named Sam Anderson, and he's been on a million other things. You probably recognized him.
I was looking him up, and I couldn't find, because I was like, the Royale manager, actor, and I couldn't find anything. So I'm so pleased, because I feel like I've seen him in so many things, but I can't put my finger on it.
He's in Forrest Gump. He's the principal of the school.
Oh my God.
That Stoops the mom. He's in Airplane 2.
He's that creepy guy.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I don't remember what he played in Airplane 2, but he was a series, he was recurring on Lost. He was recurring on ER. He was there on Perfect Strangers. He was Larry and Balky's boss at the newspaper.
So he's been in a bunch of things.
Oh yeah, a ton of things. Like if you look at his IMDb, it's very, very long. And he's been
his face is just
Friends.
so recognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was maybe not a jewel in his crown, but
maybe he used a pen name too as it. He's like, I don't want to be associated with this. Please take my name off of this.
Yeah, which knowing he was on Perfect Strangers made me laugh when they finally try to exit through the revolving door again, because they're using the same gag from the Perfect Strangers opening where they keep going around the revolving door.
I wonder if that was on purpose, like a little
Easter egg for Perfect
Probably.
Strangers fans.
Probably. Who are the only fans watching this episode for that reason, because there's one character they like. So we've got this thing about Rita and all of this, and then the assistant manager's all like, that kid's in over his head. And you're like,
with saxophone overlay. Do you hear the saxophone? I hear it.
Yeah. So you're like, okay. And then he's like, do you want rooms for the night or whatever? And so they're just kind of looking around, and who was it? I think it was Data who was like, shouldn't we go back outside and talk to the ship, because we've lost communication, and we should go back to our first point or whatever. And Riker's just like, come on, let's just hang out, let's check it out, let's explore a little bit.
No,
and 10 minutes later, Picard is like, it's not like Riker to not follow protocol. I'm like, nah, I think
isn't it?
You may not know your first officer as well as you think you do.
Agreed.
And I love that the gangster's name is Mickey D, because every time they talk about him, I'm like, McDonald's?
That's what I thought.
I'm not afraid of McDonald's. McDonald's is going to kill you, kid.
You know what? I thought, Gil, I wrote the same thing. I went, this Mickey D's is so shitty. I would probably prefer if Ronald McDonald came in and was threatening this guy, because it would play probably just as well. It was so dumb.
Any line of dialogue where they mention Mickey D, let's definitely pretend they're talking about McDonald's.
Yeah, so that would, again, be more interesting. If you had some killer clown come into the casino, you'd be like, what is going on right now?
So I did, the one thing I did like from this episode is the bits of comic relief that Data provides. I did like that. That was enjoyable for the 2 seconds that it happened, and then the rest was like a colonoscopy. It was just uncomfortable and awful all around.
Well, that whole gambling scene, I actually wrote down, was legitimately charming.
That was very fun. Yeah, so
especially
Data,
at the end where he starts snapping, and I love it. That was all really cool.
That for me, I was like, I'm here for this. I love this. So in the beginning, Data ends up bumping into this man who I just called Tex.
The Southern gentleman.
I just kind of called Tex. Yeah, he's basically just a ripoff of the season 1 finale, where those cryogenically frozen people are defrosted, and one of them is like a Southern heavy drinking gambling guy. And I was like, basically the same person. And he says, "All right, time to get down."
Just sorry to cut you off, but also, Andrea and I talked about this a little bit off stage. Had they brought back that guy into this episode, that would have made it more interesting too, because you'd be like, "Wait a minute. How did he get here? Like,
yes.
Didn't we leave you like on some shuttle going to Ryza, multiple
or something
episodes ago? Yeah, that would have been like, how did he get here? Like, that would have been super interesting.
That would have made sense. There definitely are a few of those, like, what are you doing here kind of moments. And in a very small and incredibly shallow and not well thought out way, that's what this is, where it's like, how did a freaking NASA astronaut get all the way out here in a freaking 1920s, 1930s, 1980s, 1990s like casino? Like,
and
none of this makes any sense.
And no interest in answering it either.
No, it's just so dumb and so bland. It's like there's
They give a little bit of like they were shot down by a modern weapon, but we don't know who or what or why. Like, it's just the entire episode can be surmised as, I don't know. All right, let's go to our starbase. Like, that's all that this one's like. Yeah,
that's the answer for everything.
The message of the episode at the end, like the last line of the episode, is Picard being like Fermat's theorem, it's a puzzle we may never solve.
Engage.
So the whole theme of your episode is like, it doesn't matter. You know what? You're thinking about it too much.
Yeah, totally.
You guys are overthinking.
Don't think about it too hard. Just have fun with the gambling.
Yes. Okay, so Data bumps into this Southern guy who I just call Tex. And Tex says, time to get down to business. And I love when Data goes, what sort of business do you suppose he's getting down to? Like, I thought that was really cute. So now that at this point, they're like, okay, I feel like we've seen enough. This kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's get out of here. And they try to leave. And I remember watching this episode when it first came out when I was a kid, and like this episode made me anxious for a couple of reasons. Like, the skeleton and the dead body was like really well done, and it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. But the thing that really bothered me was that you can't walk out of do you not know how revolving doors work? How do you get trapped in a fucking revolving door? That's like physically impossible to get trapped in a how does that even happen?
The whole thing is physically impossible. That's the point. It's the impossible planet.
They were going for that, like, Pac-Man, the room kind of thing, where you walk through one door and you would come back into the same room.
Aha! See, that would have been better.
Well, that's what they were going for, clearly. It's just they used the least amount of special effects possible, which was like, yeah, just go around the revolving door, guys. Just... We're not gonna bother with a special effect. We're not gonna bother with editing or anything.
We spent all of our budget on that cool space storm, so we're pretty much tapped.
You have a revolving door. It's perfect because you can just walk back in. Am I
right? You know what? There's so many times that Tracy Torme might have been like, God damn it. No, this is why I'm taking my name off of this. Yep. Because, especially when you see the revolving door and you see it revolving, you could literally fucking see the dead space outside of it. It's like, it's right there. Like, I don't understand.
You see them walk around. It's great.
They just walk in a circle and then go, how did we get here? So they're trapped. Now it's like, okay.
So they're trapped. But before they realize they're trapped, Riker's just like, let's just all have a good time, guys. And so Picard is like, what is going on down there? And Troy's like, well, I can sense Riker, and Riker alone, right? Because that's her Imzadi. So that's the only psychic connection she has with anybody, apparently. So she's like, yeah, I can sense Riker, and he doesn't feel like he's in danger. He feels amused.
Can she not read Worf? I feel like she can. Oh, she can't? Just generally?
She can't from a distance. She's like a mental transporter. So we saw this in the episode in season 1 called Skin of Evil, which was another really dumb episode, where Troy was trapped inside of a shuttle, and she could sense when things were going on with the away team, but only with Riker. She could sense there were people on the planet. She could sense it was her friends. And then when Riker got swallowed up by the tar monster, she was like, no, not my Imzadi. So she could only like sense him for whatever reason. So again, here she's like, I sense Riker. I sense what he's feeling. Oh, he's feeling this way. Oh, he's feeling that way. But the rest of the away team, who cares about them?
I thought this was like one of those rare moments when Troy was really useful.
Yes.
Because communications were out.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. What I expected when the communications got back up online was Picard to be like, do you have any idea what time it is? We have been worried sick, young man. Like, I thought he was going to, because that's, you're going to this, let's think about this. This is like a major boo-boo on Riker's part. You're going to this crazy, inhospitable, nasty planet with this like mystery bubble of like breathable oxygen. And then you go into this building and you have lost communication. So as far as you're aware, the Enterprise is now like, oh shit, like, where are they? What has happened? And you're not even going to think about that is so inconsiderate in my opinion. I'm like, you're just gonna dick around and be like, they can wait a little longer, we're fine. The Enterprise doesn't know you're fine. For all they know, you could have been swallowed up into like a black hole and you're dead. And you're just like, well, let's just poke around. When does poking around ever really work for the Enterprise crew?
Yeah, I agree. This was kind of a departure from Riker, because do you remember the episode called oh gosh, I forget what the name of this episode was. Oh, Home Soil, where they were like terraforming, and so there's this guy who gets shot by this laser that was taken over by alien beings, and he's like laying on the floor like smoldering, and Riker takes a moment to be like, first officer's log, right? He makes a log, and then he like, comm badges to Picard, lets him know what's going on. So this guy just got shot by a laser. We're going to transport him to sick bay. And after they finish their conversation, then they get him on to sick bay, where he unfortunately dies. So I feel
like, he would have survived. He would have survived if Riker hadn't been like, let me make a first officer's log for 5 minutes first.
So and like he usually does comm badge in. So for him to do this is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
For dramatic purposes, as just from a storytelling point of view, for them to immediately turn around and try to walk out and then not be able to, might have increased the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
More than like waiting another 5 minutes before trying to walk out.
Yes, absolutely. I think that would have been immediately like bum, 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 bum.
Oh,
it's like it builds up that tension.
Yeah, they beamed into a place they can't beam out of. Okay, something's going on. All right.
Yes. No, but instead we have to live through like shitty Casablanca. So they end up realizing like we can't get out of this stupid revolving door, so we're trapped. They try to like use a phaser to cut out of the walls and stuff, and they're like, okay, we're totally trapped. So they detected with their tricorder some human DNA. So they're like, okay, let's go upstairs. We'll take the turbo lift. They take the elevator up. By the way, whatever floor they're on in this hotel, fire whoever designed that. It is the ugliest freaking hotel hallway I've ever seen in my life. I was like, who designed this set? Who decorated? This is so awful. They clearly went to Home Depot and got some of that like landscaping lattice and then just glued it onto some doors and then called it a door. And it's like, what the?
As I said before, they spent their entire budget on the space storm, and they had to just be like, guys, what do you have in your backyard? Let's just bring that on in. Bring it on in.
That's totally it.
Who do you know? Is that your neighbor? They can be the Southern gentleman. Bring them on in. Yeah. Bring them all in.
So they determine that they find this skeleton that actually, I thought the effects on that was really cool. It was genuinely like, it freaked me out when I was a kid. I was expecting when I saw it again yesterday that I was going to be like, wow, I thought that was so cool when I was a kid, or scary. Look how cheesy it is. And in reality, it was actually like genuinely really well done. And
that's all the budget of this episode.
That was all of it. That and the space storm.
Cool.
Can you guys explain to me? So this body has been dead for 283 years. Mm-hmm. They open the door. They don't get a whiff of that. They don't get like the must. They're not immediately going to be like, oh, there's a dead body in here.
Nope. Decomp would have gone away like, I don't know, 237 years ago. I don't know. Like,
you think the stink would have gone away?
I don't know what would have happened, because like, so, okay, if we were talking about a real hotel, they would have air conditioning units that like filter out the air and all that stuff. But we're talking about an impossible hotel on an impossible planet built by aliens to make everything the same forever. What are the rules in this place?
Yes.
Well, here's where we get into the question of why they're here, right? Because generally my question is, are they continually going through the story of the novel? Is it just replaying over and over again?
I wondered about that too.
Is after the guy died, did that stop? Was it essentially just a blank space where that body was just decomposing sort of in this building that was on his planet?
I don't think so. I think it just keeps going over and over and over.
Like it gets to the end and then restarts.
Yeah, I think it gets to the end and it restarts, but it may have paused when he died. Yeah.
We don't really have evidence of that, right?
Well, because he mentions it in the book where he's like stuck in this storyline that they keep running over and over and over. So he's stuck in the loop. The loop may have paused when he died and restarted when the away team entered, because maybe it needs a human presence to go. But there's also no reason to think that it's just been going and keeps going, because when they leave, but the bubble doesn't disappear.
That's what I assumed. I just assumed that the story just kept going forever. Like you get to the last page of the book and you go right back to the beginning. Data does say that the decomposition has been halted of this body because the environment is so sterile, so whatever alien powers that be that created this space just sort of, I don't know, they put in like the window dressing, but the rest of it kind of wasn't real. So something dies and it just stays in that state of decomp
just stays preserved
forever.
At some point.
Yeah. So finally now it's making a little bit more sense what's happening. for some reason on this spaceship, where every square inch is planned out, somebody brought like a shitty like airport novel into this freaking space shuttle. And apparently it seems like the aliens accidentally killed like these other humans by like a virus or a something that like he was the only one who survived like whatever the illness was.
Remember the ship was destroyed by an energy, like something that was comparable to like a phaser blast or like a photon torpedo.
Okay, so see that so the powers that be felt guilty and were like, we're gonna just put him in this like pleasant construct, like assuming that the book Hotel Royale was like a blueprint for like how humans really live. And so they put him in this like shitty airport novel. They find Colonel, it turns out his name is Colonel Richie. He was
He's
part
from
of
a
like
time when the United States has 52 states, and Commander Riker knows exactly what years that is.
I know. He doesn't know Fermat's theorem, but he knows what time period the U.S. had 52 states. Okay. So I was like, that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but whatever. Here's something I thought. I was like, gosh, this was really like, you guys were really hopeful because it looks like when they pull up the record in 2037, the U.S. and, the space program attempted to travel outside the Earth's solar system. And I was like, that's only 16 years from now. So you guys were being like crazy hopeful about the pace that our space program could work at, because we can't even get to the freaking moon anymore. Like we're moving in reverse. Like Elon's going to try to get us to Mars in like 20 years or whatever. But like we're not moving.
But in 1989, we were still doing stuff, right? Like
we were hopeful, maybe.
This was only a couple years after the Challenger. Right?
That's true.
Like
That's
we were
true.
Definitely doing space stuff at this time.
I think it was only like 2 years after the Challenger, if I recall that correctly. But anyway, so they realized like, okay, this man ended up dying here. Here's my question. In his journal entry, he said, I feel like I have no hard feelings toward the like alien beings that put me here. They're clearly not doing it maliciously. So I bear no ill will towards them. They have no idea like the hell that my life has been. And I've lived here for 38 years. And I thought, good and well that the bellboy has a gun. I would take that gun and just shoot myself and just end it. Like you're never leaving this planet.
Maybe he tried.
Oh God, maybe
I'm sure
he
this is like Groundhog's Day. I'm sure he tried everything. Yeah. There's because it sounds like the benevolent aliens put him in this bubble, in this safe little bubble, and then pieced out. So they're not there monitoring. They're not there to chit chat. They're not there to be like, wait, maybe this isn't working or anything. They're just like, oops, sorry. And
I thought the people in the Royale were the aliens. That was my assumption.
They're all holograms. Like
my assumption was that those were the aliens and they were like living this novel over and over again.
No, the aliens built this like an elaborate holodeck. They built
and then left.
Do we know that?
They planted. Yeah, they talk about that's what he says in his journal entry, where he's like, they created this space for me, and there's no life signs on any of those beings at all. So they just they kind of like taking some non-native plant and putting it in a new place and just be like, oops, sorry that I stepped on you. Maybe you'll grow here, and then you leave. So it's like not like he could get feedback. I doesn't know that this is maybe not the best. So it just was so unfortunate. I do like how he was so just like, you know what? They did the best they can. They ruined all the rest of my life, but I'm okay with it. Like I forgive them, whatever. And then he dies. And I'm just like thinking about, and the one thing he did say was like, I just wish we would have had a better novel on board the ship because this is like such a trashy, poorly written novel to be stuck in. And I actually now knowing that Tracy Torme did not want his name on this makes me think that line has even more like significance.
But then, okay, so this like climax of the story happens as the assistant manager tells us that Mickey D is going to show up, and
McDonald's about to show up with a big
Ronald McDonald cruising in here with a cape and kills the bellboy, and Picard tells Riker, I don't know how Picard got here faster than Data did, but he tells Riker that the hotel gets bought out by some foreign investors.
By 3 foreign investors, actually, which is very convenient that 3 people happen to beam in on their away team.
Yeah, thank God there wasn't a 4th because he wouldn't have been able to leave or hide or anything.
Yeah,
so
or if they're
like we got
2
these
of them.
3. Yeah, that's true. So I this is where we get to the one fun scene in the entire garbage of this episode, which is when Data has to start playing craps and like they're like, we're just gonna buy, we're gonna break the bank, buy out the hotel, and hopefully the novel will like end.
And my question here was, why isn't he playing cards when he's an android and could count them? Like, I know the guy asked about counting cards and he didn't know what that meant.
Well, I guess
but if
Craps
Riker
is
explained it to him,
faster, right?
Yeah, craps could be fun. And there's more, I guess, chance for drama too. Although I did love when he was playing blackjack earlier, he went, hit me, and he kind of like scratched the cards on the table. Yeah, he did that little like mannerism, which was pretty cute.
You're exactly right, but it's also like, just another visual thing, and we know that it's going to be a little bit faster.
Don't get me wrong. It was visual. It was cool. I loved all the crowd hanging around, but I was just like, we know that Data's into poker.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen him play that before on the show. When he first meets the Southern Gentleman, they're playing blackjack. We know he can like shuffle cards at the speed of light. And then they're like, we need to make a ton of money fast. Okay, let's go play a game with dice. I was just like...
Which Data himself says there is an element to chance that you can't account for. So like maybe
so
that
like, why not play any other game where there's no element of chance? And I get that that's not gambling, but that's not the point here. The point here is to survive with your life. It's not to
He
be fair.
remakes the dice with his hands. He like... they were like weighted dice.
Yeah, they're weighted dice, so he unweights them.
He fixes them somehow, and then is throwing perfect craps.
Yes, he is. So I love the transition between Data being unsure and just kind of just sort of flicking the dice. And then instantly he's like shaking them, blowing on them, throwing them, snapping them. And then he goes, Papa needs a new pair of shoes. And I'm like, Data, where did you download that from? And I love it. I was so there for it. I was like, woo, Data's getting fun now, right? Like he's snapping and it's that was the only part for me that was worth like watching. Plus it's always fun to see Data not be Data for just 1 second. And even within the confines of his like protocols where it's like he now knows that he has to do this in order for them to get the away team out. So he gets like into the character. And I freaking love when they do that. And Brent Spiner does the best job at this. I think it's hilarious. As a side note, I went to a charity event and it was like a casino night. And I had never played craps before in my life. And I won $5,000.
Oh my
playing
gosh.
craps.
And you did not give it back to the charity.
And I'm still on the run. I'm recording from a secure location. No, it was a charity event, so you have to give all the money back. But it was very fun. It's a very exciting game. It was really fun.
Nice.
But they break the bank. They win like more than $12.5 million and like spread that money around. And then suddenly they can leave. I don't know why, because I feel like if
the story's over.
I guess, but doesn't it just restart though? Like
it restarts once they leave, but you have to go through the revolving doors from the space bubble.
They also save the lady who's about to be like sold into human trafficking by tech. Like she's she's losing all her money and they're like, here's your money. You don't have to
get out of here,
with
girl.
this guy.
Get out of here.
You definitely don't have to sleep with this dude.
Move it along. Yeah, so so I think like this could have happened also with the astronaut, that every time the story ended, he could leave the revolving doors, but there's nowhere he could go. He would just be in that little space bubble, like just sitting there. There's nowhere for him to go. He had no spaceship, he had no communication. So even if like the ending of the book unlocks the doors, which is what happened here, it would have made no difference for him, unfortunately.
That's true. Which actually for me, like in my brain makes more sense that you could leave and then come back and it's all reset.
Yeah.
Instead of just being in a room and everything kind of vanishes and resets weirdly. Like that'd be so weird. But they're back on the Enterprise now, and as Gil said, Picard refers to Fermat's theorem in response to Riker saying, like, "What's the point of this planet? What is the point of this? And what's the point of this episode? Quite frankly." And Picard says, "We may never know." And then the ship just sails off into the sunset, and that's it. And it's like, dude, what?
They don't even leave behind like a security buoy, like they usually do.
Quarantine the freaking planet. Just quarantine it,
or even just a buoy that just says, like, "Hey, by the way, there's this really crap novel playing on loop on this planet." So, it could be like a vacation spot. If people are like, I want to be in a crap novel from like the 20s, 30s, 80s, 90s and see what that's like they could have done that, but they were just like, well, doop-de-doop-de-doo, like left it just open and vulnerable for the next ship. But with that, I think we're done. I think we have beaten this dead horse to the point where it's turned into a mummy in a hotel room.
I thought might have been the lesson of the episode that maybe got lost in rewrites. There's a moment after the gambling scene where Riker...
Sorry, we're still laughing over this.
Sorry, Andrea's laughing is making me laugh. You go ahead.
You've been beating this dead horse for 263 years.
That's how it feels.
Very good.
So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode because Really? So yeah. Before we wrap though, I want to ask you, Gil, where can people find you on the internet or the world?
Yeah, well, in the world, you can find me in the San Fernando Valley. That's where I hang my hat. On the internet, so like you were talking about, I have a show that I do every month. It's called Your Late Night Show Tonight. It is broadcast over Zoom on Nowhere Comedy Club. Bigger comedians, smaller comedians, comedians of all sorts every single month at Nowhere Comedy Club. So please follow us on Instagram and Twitter for news about that. And if you want to follow me personally, I'm at GJ Barron on all the things.
So there you go. And we will also have all those links available on our website of the TNGpodcast.com.
Awesome. All right. Next week, friends, we are talking about season 2, episode 13, Times Square. Thank you so much for just surviving this episode with us. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.